We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the Monday Mashup. This is Robert Phoenix. I am your host. It is the 26th of March. I should do kind of like an intro sort of a thing, shouldn't I? Instead of just telling you who I am, what you're listening to, and the date. Isn't that kind of boring? You ever listen to George Norrie at night? Or any of the other guys on Coast to Coast? Coming to you live from the City of Angels, They go on to have a very enthusiastic shout out to all these different people and areas. I guess the difference between my show and their show is that they've been awake for a while. And generally speaking, I haven't been awake for very long when I do this show. That's a little secret I'm letting out to you. Some of you may know that, some of you may not know that, but that is the secret. If you've ever wondered about the intro of the show, the recording is Philip K. Dick. That's the guy who's talking in the recording. It's Philip K. Dick. And what he's talking about in the intro was he was living in Orange County, and at that time, Philip K. Dick had a pretty intense history as a drug addict or a druggee, and you name it. I mean, he was doing it. He was mostly into hallucinogenics, psychedelics. You know, he was part of the '60s milieu, and he actually was in Orange County, and he got clean, and he was becoming kind of more of a quote-unquote natural mystic. He was very interested in mysticism, whereas early in his writing career, I think it was not necessarily that interesting for him. He was more interested in the ideas that science fiction could provide for him. Somebody's trying to get a hold of me. Who's this? Let's see. Is anybody trying to get a hold of me? No. I don't know what's going on here. Oh well. Everything seems to be okay. Everything seems to be all right, right? Okay. I don't like being interrupted in my show, by the way. I've come to realize that these little tiny little, I used to be able to be okay with them. The more I get into this, the more the little interruptions bother me. Anyway, Philip K. Dick was very into mysticism and trying to, he was, you know, before he was into the ideas that science fiction could provide for him and getting into these really far out states where he could tap into them. So he was actually, you know, getting clean with his life because he'd had some pretty traumatic experiences with drugs, mainly being chased by drug dealers all the way up into Canada for drugs that were stolen from him, and that he was responsible for in terms of the money. So he wound up going to Southern California, and he got a teaching gig. I believe it was at the Cal State Northridge. I think that's where it was. And was doing some teaching there and cleaning out his life. So he was having some his teeth worked on. And I think he was having either a root canal or something was going on with his teeth in a big way. And he was doing sodium pentothal because that's what they were using at the doctor's office or the dentist's office. So it wasn't nitrous oxide. It was sodium pentothal. And sodium pentothal, if you don't know what it is, it's also known as truth serum. And I've had it before. I had it when I had my major work done on my teeth when I was a kid. So I had sodium pentothal as well. They did that back in the 70s. I don't know if they do that now, but they did it to me. So I remember being completely zonked out when I was a kid. Anyway, so he called in a prescription for painkillers from the pharmacy. And this is back in the day when people actually would deliver things to your house. Like the pharmacy would deliver drugs to your house. I guess they still might do that. I don't know. I don't get drugs from the pharmacy or otherwise. But this woman came to Philip K. Dick's house. It was a young woman. And he opened the door, and she had on one of those Christian fishes. You know what I'm talking about? The little Pisces vesica, those little fishes. She was wearing one of those on her chest. It was like a pendant. And when he opened the door and he looked at that, according to Philip K. Dick, it emitted a pink ray. And this pink ray literally put him into a trance for about an hour and a half. This is according to Philip K. Dick. And as a result of being in this trance, he actually saw the progression of a potential reality that was going to unfold in the United States and in the world. So we're talking about the arrival of a techno-fascist state, which is what he would write about later on. And this is what he's referring to in the opening track. He's referring to being awakened to this alternate reality and how things change, and not for the better. So if you ever wondered about the opening theme, it's Philip K. Dick recounting his experience with the girl who delivered the drugs, the illegal drugs, that emitted the pink ray, which took Philip K. Dick into a trance state lasting about an hour and a half and informing him of the future of the United States and the world. So there we go. That's how it all started. Or at least that's how that track got its narrative from Philip K. Dick. So this is an interesting week in terms of news. Let's find out what we got going on here. The Trayvon Martin case is still happening, and it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we speak. Unfortunately, I feel like I had Sister Myra on the show on Friday, and we talked about this a little bit. We talked about, I don't think we really talked about it from kind of a mystical or occult or esoteric perspective. We talked about it more from a social perspective. I think I tried to bring in the whole Pisces, Neptune and Pisces, Chiron and Pisces flavor with this, like what is real, what isn't real, what's truth, what isn't truth, what are we being manipulated with, how are our signals being diverted, how are our emotional chords being strummed, and this gets played across every single aspect of our culture and our society. Nobody is immune to it. Nobody. I think that the whole thing with Sandra Fluke or Flock or however you pronounce her name and Rush Limbaugh was one variant of this. Okay. The Trayvon Martin tragedy is another variant of this. We all have our variants of, tugging at us to say this is wrong and this is terrible and something's got to be done about this. We have to address this systemic evil in our society. And I agree that on some level we do. I just think we have to be very, very, very careful about who is advancing the program. If you follow the Ulsterman report, which is kind of interesting actually, Ulsterman is this guy who's he's a blogger, and he's got this insider in the Obama administration. It's clear that it's an insider, and the reason why that it's an insider is evident is because when Ulsterman interviews this guy, and this guy says X, Y, and Z is going to happen, well, it happens. First of all, he talked about very early on. Well, it wasn't early on. It was middle of last year, and he talked about how Reggie Love or somebody close to the president was going to take the fall for this book that came out and this whole kind of protocol that was going on, this war that was going on between Valerie Jarrett and Richard Daley's son, who had been brought in to play the role of Rahm Emanuel in the White House. And sure enough, everything that he talked to Ulsterman about manifested, and there is this explosion between Jarrett and Daley's son, and the guy that took the fall was Reggie Love, who came out and basically restrained Daley, even though Daley did not need any restraint. But he lost his gig. The body man lost his gig, and he talked about how Daley was in jeopardy as well, and Daley walked away from he left. So now he's no longer the fixer, because they needed a fixer inside the Obama administration to build bridges between Obama and the different parts of the Senate and the House and other politicos who are not invested in the three branches of government. So then he talked about how the Obama administration was going to engage in a media relations war around race, and how that this was going to be one of their tactics to get Obama reelected. And sure enough, what are we seeing now? We're seeing the most unfortunate thing with the Trayvon Martin experience happening as being exploited by the administration. And not just the administration, but you have Louis Farrakhan down there, Al Sharpton. By the way, Farrakhan, Sharpton, and Obama, they're all Masons. I hate to break the news to you, but they're all Masons. Obama's a Prince Hall Mason. And the Prince Hall Lodge was the first black lodge in America. Speaking of black, that's how I like my coffee, which is what you're hearing right now. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing a very deeply politicized and racially, in my estimation, tinged event. And I'm not sure we've seen the end of it, to be honest with you. Excuse me, it's a long ways until November. So I think there's going to be more. So I guess what I'm getting at here is that Ulsterman has been ahead of the curve on this. He's been calling this stuff out, and here we go. It is yet another instance where he was on it. So we all get our signals played, and Even I do. And what we got to do is we got to step back. Let's see who's doing this. Why are they doing this? What's the, what is the big deal? I'll tell you the next big deal coming this week. It is healthcare. It is the big healthcare, the Titanic healthcare reform package that Obama is getting ready to roll out, and the administration is getting ready to roll out. Even though it won't happen for, I think, another 3 years or so, but they're going to start to put the pieces in place, especially in terms of taxation. You're going to get taxed on it. You're going to have to buy it. You're going to have to pay into it. And if you don't, well, they've hired 16,000 IRS agents to make sure that you do. And all those IRS agents are going to be armed, believe it or not. So this is the next big signal. Why? Because the Supreme Court is going to review Obamacare, and they're going to rule whether or not it's constitutional. I can tell you right now, they're going to rule in favor of the Obama administration. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. It's a complete sham. And what's going to happen? Well, a bunch of people who are on the right, a bunch of people who believe that government should stay out of their health care and should stay out of the business of being a business, which is what it's going to be once it takes on health care and integrates it. They're the ones that are going to get pissed off. They're the ones that are going to start to march. And again, their signals are going to get played. And do they have a right to do that? Sure, absolutely. But I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the next wave of angry people. And the whole thing with the Supreme Court is a complete and utter sham. They've got as much chances overturning Obamacare as I do of winning Powerball. Okay, think about that. That's just the way it is. Why? Because one of the people that helped write Obamacare is on the Supreme Court. Elena Kagan was deeply in the mix with this. She needs to recuse herself, but she will vote on this. And where do you think her vote's going to go? And that's a pretty significant vote. And then just throw in Sotomayor, who is, beholden to Obama because Obama gave her the gig. Where do you think she's going to vote? Those are 2 votes right out of the gate. The ruling is 2 votes down. So just get ready for more controversy, more pissed off people. That's just the way it is. Now, could Obamacare be overturned during a Mercury retrograde? I doubt it. And the reason why it got to the Supreme Court so quickly, by the way, is because the states were voting on it, and the states were getting ready to overturn it. And they wanted to head that off at the pass. They don't want states' rights, because once the Supreme Court rules on this thing, it's the law of the land, unfortunately. But that's just the way it is. And that's why it's getting put in front of people, the people that count. Supreme Court, right? Speaking of healthcare, Dick Cheney is recovering from a heart transplant. Can you believe that? Dick Cheney finally got a heart. I'm not sure what to say about that, other than he'll still be a heartless bastard, even with a new heart. That's maybe the best and most cogent commentary I can give on it. But shall we read the news around this? Let's see what we have here. This is Sky News. This is actually Murdoch, right? Here we go. It says here, a former U.S. vice president, may as well have made him president, Vice President Dick Cheney, has had a heart transplant and is recovering in the hospital. The 71-year-old, who is a controversial figure in the George W. Bush administration, has had a long history of heart trouble. His spokeswoman said he was in the intensive care unit of Inova Fairfax Hospital, Falls Church, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, after surgery. She added that he was recovering well. He'd been on the list for a heart transplant for more than 20 months. The statement, Mr. Cheney and his family do not know the identity of the donor, but they will be forever grateful for this life-saving gift. During his 8 years as vice president from 2001 to 2009, he wielded unprecedented power and pushed a go-it-alone worldview that infuriated critics and dogged him long after he left public life. He was the driving force on President Bush's war on terror in the wake of September 11th attacks, which included invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. Since leaving office, he has remained a prominent Republican on the political scene, often criticizing President Barack Obama. He suffered his first heart attack at age 37. He had quadruple bypass surgery in 1988 and was fitted with a pacemaker in 2001. He actually had an artificial heart for the last, 3 years? Yeah, about 3 years. So he didn't even have a real heart. He had an artificial heart. So I'd be very interested to find out who the donor was. You know, one of the things that they've figured out is that organs have memory. They have cellular memory. And it is, you know, they've gone so far as to be able to track not only traits in people that they inherit organs from, but also memories. One of the most wild aspects of this was a little girl that had received, it might have been either a heart or a liver. It was a vital organ. I think it might have been a heart. And she got this heart, and she started having terrible dreams. And the dreams are incredibly vivid and very detail-oriented, and she began to tell people about these dreams. And it was about a girl being killed, another girl being killed, but it wasn't her. And she began to tell these dreams to her parents, and they were troubling. And so the parents were talking, they went to the doctor, and the doctor wound up looking at the history. I believe it was another girl who the heart came from. And they looked at the heart and they looked at the girl, and they basically found out that the girl who donated the heart had been murdered. And so they asked this girl, the girl who was the recipient of the heart, what are the details? And she even saw the face of the man who consistently came back into the dream and killed this other little girl. So they asked for a description, and they did an artist rendition of this face. And they took that face to the parents of the girl that had been murdered. And the parents of that girl, actually, I believe they knew the guy. I think that's how it happened. They were able to trace the face to the actual killer. Now think about that. Here, this heart goes from one girl to the next, and there's a memory that's encoded in the heart, a cellular memory, and not just any memory, but the last moments of that girl's life. And she passes that along, and this girl is able to share the horror that she sees in her dreams, which leads to the capture of the man who killed the girl that wound up donating her heart. I believe it was her heart. How wild is that? And this is not the only time that they've found things like this. I mean, this is fairly common, where people have memories and feelings and lots of other stuff that are related to the other body. There is a classic case of this woman who, again, I think it might have been a heart. And she received a heart, and it was from a young man. And all of a sudden, she had all these traits and characteristics that ultimately she found were associated with the young man who died in a car accident. She developed a strong taste for beer. She didn't really like beer before, but she wound up enjoying beer. She was never really into spicy food. She got very into spicy foods. She became much more assertive. Before she was sort of, passive, and the assertive part kind of cost her relationship with her lover at the time. And so she made a note of all these changes. And she went back and she went and she found out who the donor's parents were. And they confirmed that he was into all of these things: spicy food, beer, loud music, sports. So this is what happens with the cellular memory inside of an organ which gets transplanted. So I wonder, what's inside? What are the holograms inside of the heart that is now beating in Dick Cheney? That would be a really interesting question. Now, I even wonder whether or not they need to get a heart from somebody. Can't they just clone hearts? I mean, why couldn't they? I guess maybe the danger of cloning a heart would be that it would not have a long shelf life. Because if you see the history of clones, they don't live very long. Each successive clone lives less and less and less and less and less, shorter period of time. And if you don't believe that there are clones out there, you're living under a rock, because there are. There are clones. Cloning's been around since World War II. The Germans were the ones that pioneered cloning, of course, and it's around. People get cloned all the time. Yep. Anyway, maybe that's why he didn't get a cloned heart, because they just run down. Perhaps that's it. So I wonder, what heart he got. I think it would be very interesting to see that. I really hope that he got the heart of, who would I want Dick Cheney to get a heart of? I'd love Dick Cheney to get the heart of like a truther. That would be fun, wouldn't it? That'd be great. That if somehow he got the heart of like a quote-unquote patriot, and now all of a sudden Dick Cheney is swinging the other way. He goes from Dick Cheney oppressor to Dick Cheney liberator of the people. And there's a real disconnect between his head and his heart. He knows that he should continue to carry out his evil plan, but now his heart is saying, Dick, what about liberty? Dick, what about love? Dick, what about the people? There's a funny song called Dick Cheney Needs Love. It's very, very funny. It's a song by a group called the Ginger Ninjas, and I'm going to see if I can find it and play it right now for you. Let's see. Dick Cheney Needs Love. Hold on, let me see if I can get this up here. It's a funny song. Let's see if I can get it. Here we go. All right, here it is. This is the Ginger Ninjas. I first saw the Ginger Ninjas up at the Harmony Festival, and this is actually a very, very funny little tune. Let me plug in my computer here. Completely free associating. Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney Needs More Love. Ginger Ninjas. 4 minutes and 45 seconds. I'll use this time to duck into the chat room, hang out for a little bit, wake up, come back, and get into the last part of the show. Here they are, the Ginger Ninjas.
Vice President Dick Cheney was seen grimacing
All right, that was the Ginger Ninjas and Dick Cheney. You know, if you ever want to call in, you can do that. Oh, that's the refrain. Let's let this play out, so it could at least have the semblance of knowing that I knew that it was going to be a refrain. There we go. The Ginger Ninjas are interesting. They cruise around by bicycle. They go to all their gigs by bicycle. They don't have any vans or anything. They put all their equipment on their bicycles, including their little amps, and they use their bicycles to power their live shows, which is kind of interesting. You know, so if you want to hear them, you got to get on your bike and you got to pedal. So the audience will take turns pedaling, and they can plug in and play. And that's the Ginger Ninjas. That's how they do it. And they go all over the place. They tour all over the country. Wherever their bikes will take them, they've gone to Mexico. So there we go. The Ginger Ninjas. Dick Cheney Needs More Love. I think they have a website and more interesting music in case you liked what you heard. It is 10:34 here on the edge of America. The time is we've got 25 minutes left in the show. On a format basis, I'm going to be moving to a 2-hour show on Mondays, and I'm going to have the 2-hour show on Fridays. This Friday will be the return of our friend Les Visible, a.k.a. Just Visible. That's how his friends and associates call him. I'll be talking to him very early on Tuesday morning, recording that, and we'll be replaying that on the Friday show for an hour. I'll play that in the second hour of the show. The first hour I'll be doing readings. And next week, the show will be bifurcated into, again, the 2-hour segment. I'll have a kind of a commentary in the first part of the show, and in the second part of the show, I'll have a guest. And that will be the new format moving forward. It will be no more Sunday night format. Just wasn't working for many different reasons. So it looks like Rick Santorum is going to win the spate of primaries that the Republicans have been tromping through. But that doesn't mean that he is going to be the Republican nominee. And I'll tell you right now, if Rick Santorum is the Republican nominee, the Republicans likely will lose this election. Because I can't think of a more polarizing character in the face of Barack Obama than Rick Santorum. And unfortunately, Rick Santorum is polarizing without the really good polarizing effects of being polarizing, if you know what I'm saying. They're for all the wrong reasons. Rick Santorum will, take the very stiff moral high ground. Rick Santorum is anti-abortion, which a lot of people will be very charged about. Rick Santorum is anti-gay marriage, which a lot of people will be very charged about. And yet, Rick Santorum is pro-war, and he'll go to war with anybody at any time. He's effusively supportive of Israel and will back Israel to the hilt. Whatever Israel wants to do, he'll do. He's already stated that. So he's polarizing for all the wrong reasons. And yet, when you put him up against Obama, Obama's cool, Obama's slick, Obama is, he's anything but Rick Santorum. I think Rick Santorum versus Obama is a win for the Obama administration, hands down. Mitt Romney versus Obama 3 months ago, I think Romney takes it. I think Ron Paul could have beaten Obama. I really do. But the media and the voting, by the way, because they have found serious voting irregularities in a number of the caucuses where Obama where Ron Paul was defeated. And between that and the marginalization of Ron Paul by the media, they killed Ron Paul's candidacy. They literally completely marginalized him. They messed with the votes. It's clear. There's plenty of examples out there where it happened. And they torpedoed his candidacy. I think Ron Paul, if I were Ron Paul, I'd run as a third-party candidate. I'm sorry, just the way it is. And he's not running for re-election in Texas. He's not. And quite frankly, I don't think Rick Santorum can beat Obama. The only person that I think can beat Obama, believe it or not, is Jeb Bush. And I've been saying for a while that Jeb Bush is the guy that will emerge in a brokered convention. I mean, people like Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney, they've all got big money behind them. And the big money has kept them in this race. And the big money doesn't really care if they win or lose. The big money could be putting their even bigger money on Obama. But what they want is they want to create a sense of confusion and a sense of fractured unity within the Republican Party with essentially three, in many ways, unelectable candidates. Now, I think Romney, for the real conservative base, is very unelectable because he's worth way too much money and seems incredibly out of touch with the quote-unquote people. Santorum is unelectable because he's incredibly extreme, and not even really extreme in a positive way. And then you have Gingrich, who is more aligned in a lot of ways with Obama. And if you get into Gingrich's background and his history, you find out that he's a member of the CFR, and he's a dyed-in-the-wool Luciferian. They're all playing for the same team anyway. The one guy that stood out, who was different, the one guy that was ostracized, the one guy that was marginalized, that was Ron Paul. And a lot of people don't agree with Ron Paul's economy or economic policies, and nor do they agree with some of his stances on the quote-unquote right to life, but they're going to get it anyway with Rick Santorum. Ron Paul really posed the greatest challenge to Barack Obama out of all the candidates. So they've kept these guys in the race, and they're stepping on each other's toes, and it's really the Three Stooges now, with Gingrich and Romney and Santorum. And lying in the wings, waiting in the bushes, get it, is Jeb Bush. And he is going to emerge during a brokered convention. That's my theory. Now, Bush could get a leg up and in through a number of different ways. Number one, he could be brought in as a candidate, a proxy candidate vis-a-vis a vice presidency, which is how his old man got a start, right? As a vice president. That's one way of him being able to get in through the side door. Maybe Santorum takes him on as a VP. It's possible. In which case, Santorum could become, theoretically, more electable. Theoretically. Or Bush is the guy that emerges through the brokered convention. It's like, oh, here's Jeb Bush. And then they pair him with a guy like Paul Ryan or Mario Rubio or Chris Christie, and the Tea Partiers get their VP candidate. Or maybe even Rand Paul, although I doubt seriously that Rand Paul would be the guy that would run with Jeb Bush. Although Rand Paul was mentioned as a VP candidate for Mitt Romney. And most people know that Romney and Bush are related; they're cousins. So, why wouldn't Rand Paul theoretically get the call for a guy like Jeb Bush if he's going to get the call for a guy like Romney? Don't know. It's going to be a very interesting. The Republican convention is going to be extremely interesting. It's going to be great theater, really good theater. Speaking of good theater, there's this guy that hangs out on rents.com. His name is Brother Nathaniel, and he's kind of bizarre. So he's Jewish, but he's like fiercely Orthodox. He's become an Orthodox priest. That's his scene. I think he's Russian Orthodox, and he's got serious man love for Vladimir Putin, which I don't really quite understand, because I think Putin's in on the game just like everybody else. But he thinks Putin is going to be the great white savior, and that Putin is really sticking it to the Jews, and he's really sticking it to the Zionists. He's the one guy in the world that people can get behind, and that there's hope. I don't see that at all. I think Putin is a manipulative bastard, but who isn't in terms of politics. But I also see him playing the game at a high level, just like everybody else plays. But anyway, that's an aside. So Brother Nathaniel, he dresses with these giant crosses, and he's got his cross with Jesus on it. He's really, he's almost a cartoon character, and his goal is to take on Israel, Zionism, American Zionists. That's his whole trip, right? So he's got this one video where all of his videos are outdoors. He stands in front of these very picturesque and magisterial mountains, these majestic mountains. They're wonderful. It's a great backdrop. He gets into these rants, and this latest rant, this plane behind him starts laying chemtrails like crazy. I mean, just back and forth in the background. And I'm paying more attention to the chemtrails, to be honest with you, than what he's saying. And I thought it was fascinating. Like, here you are, you're talking about, this huge problem that we're facing with AIPAC Israel and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, just off to your right, they're carpet bombing the atmosphere around you and poisoning you. So I went to the YouTube page where they have the video, and he says on his YouTube page that if there are any comments about chemtrails, they will be deleted and you will be blocked. And I thought, well, what the hell is this about? You know, here's a guy that's supposedly, quote unquote, in to the truth, right? And he won't even acknowledge the fact that they are laying chemtrail carpet in the sky behind them. I find it fascinating, utterly fascinating. And if he thinks that people are going to think he's a wacko, it's like he's already 70% there by his costumery. I mean, he's kind of a funny guy too. I mean, I watch his videos because they make me laugh. I think he's got a good sense of humor, to be honest with you. But clearly, he has no sense of humor when it comes to chemtrails or people bringing up this whole issue of chemtrails. But there it is. They're right there in his video. It's utterly fascinating. Really fascinating. All right, 10:46 here. You're listening to the Monday Mashup. If you ever want to call in, you can call in. I'm happy to take your calls. I like talking to people. I truly do. I'm very into talking to people. It's one of my great joys in life. Speaking of talking to people, I met this guy last night. I went to a hot tub, which I normally don't do. I normally don't do hot tubs because I don't like sharing water with other people. I'm sorry. I just don't. But it was local. A friend of mine invited me. I've been by myself all weekend. Thought, why not? I'll go out and socialize. So I did this hot tub. It's in my neighborhood. And it was kind of an interesting scene. Nice people. They're all older. And there was this one guy that was there, and super interesting guy. And his whole thing was ayahuasca. He's like taking 7 ayahuasca journeys, at least 7. And he takes them down in Peru, and he works with real hardcore brujos, shamans. And he told me some really interesting stories about how there were at least 3 to 4, they call them witches, that were inside of him and were fucking his life up. And they got rid of them by him doing a series of journeys with San Pedro cactus and ayahuasca. And then the final journey was this very small, tiny flower. And he didn't know what the name of the flower was. And he ate the flower. And within about an hour, he was engaged in about 3 to 4 hours of epic vomiting. And before he had gone to South America to experience this, he'd seen the doctor, and the doctor said that there was an unusual amount of fat around his liver. And then when he came back from his trip, that they needed to look at this. And he went through the final phase of this cleansing, which is where they said, you've got these witches inside of you. So he went through this cleansing, and he had a half a day of just epic puking. And after that, he felt great. He came back to the States, and he wound up going to the doctors, and they essentially said that he was clean, that the fat had left his liver. So he made the connection that that's how he was being attacked, and that the whole thing was for according to him, was he was being attacked by these witches because of his son that was going to be born. And his son was going to be a very powerful shaman. And he didn't even know that he was going to have a son at that time. He wasn't even in a relationship. and eventually he was in a relationship, and eventually he did have a son, and the relationship has led him to settle in Vilcabamba, which is in Venezuela. I'm sorry, Ecuador. And it's where all these expats are living now. People like Bill Ryan and George Green, they're all down in Vilcabamba. Now he's there, and he bought a coffee farm, and he's going to be making coffee, growing coffee. That's going to be his new scene now. It was fascinating series of stories, interesting trajectory, and I have to say I was a little jealous. I was jealous of the fact that he had a wife who was into living in a place like that and actually able to raise a child outside of this country where it would be away from the clutches, the pernicious clutches of an invasive system that's getting more invasive with each and every day, and having the resources to buy kind of a rundown coffee farm to grow exquisite organic free trade coffee. I have to say I was a little envious of that guy's life. I was happy for him, don't get me wrong. My envy would never stand in the way of anybody else's happiness. But I was a little envious, I have to say. It was a good story. So if anything, the time in the hot tub gave me a sense that somebody out there is actually living their dream with somebody that loves them and supports them and has the resources in order to do that. I was inspired. So there we go. All right, it's 10:52, and I have things to do. I've got a newsletter to write. I've got readings. I've been pretty slammed with readings lately, which is good, although they take up a great deal of energy and time, but it's good. It's what I do. It's my business. If you don't know what my business is, I'm also an astrologer besides a commentator and filter for the news. So I'm going to get into my other life. I'm going to do a recorded reading, and I'm going to write the newsletter. And then I'm going to go off to my other job, which helps me pay my bills. My life is wall-to-wall, nonstop activity. Very little downtime, at least right now. And I'm not complaining. It's what I signed up for. But every now and then, I have to say, like, how many of you have seen that video of the woman from Michigan who won the lottery who collects food stamps? How many of you have seen that? I'm sure you've seen it. And I'm thinking to myself, how can this dingbat win the lottery? And I don't. And maybe I did win the lottery. Maybe I won the lottery with a great kid. You know, maybe I won the lottery with great friends and a wonderful community and people that listen to this radio show and read my blog. Maybe that's my lottery. And I have to recognize that and thank that and be grateful for that. But you know, it's like I could do a lot with $500,000. Trust me, I could. And I wouldn't collect food stamps. I would not collect food stamps. Okay, that's it. We've reached the end of the line. I want to thank everybody that's listened and been a part of the chat room and is living their life according to their own highest principles and order of being. My name is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Monday Mashup, and I will be back on Friday with our friend Visible in the Doors of Divination. The first hour, I'll be doing free readings. And then the second hour, I'll be talking to my friend in a pre-recorded conversation, which will take place late tonight, early tomorrow morning for him. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you got mashed.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu. perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words, I submit that these impressions are valid and significant. And I will even say this, such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.